The news of Emperor Zane's proposal spread across Earth faster than anyone expected. Within hours, every television channel, internet site, and radio station was discussing humanity's first contact with galactic civilization. The reactions were as diverse as humanity itself. In Seoul, government officials held emergency meetings that lasted through the night. Military leaders wanted to treat the aliens as a potential threat. Scientists demanded years of careful study before making any decisions. Politicians worried about maintaining national sovereignty in a galactic empire. But Hyun found himself in the unusual position of being the human who mattered most to the most powerful being in the galaxy. Emperor Zane had made it clear that he wanted Earth's response to come through the simple mechanic who had passed his test. "This is too much responsibility for one person," So Young told Hyun as they sat in the Wanderer's main chamber. "You're being asked to speak for all of humanity." "I know," Hyun replied, watching Arya's consciousness swirl through the ship's crystalline cores. "But maybe that's not such a bad thing. Politicians and scientists think too much like the advanced civilizations that the Emperor described. They want to study everything until it becomes too complex to understand." Outside the ship, representatives from every major nation had arrived at Jirisan. The small mountain area had become the most important place on Earth. Military barriers kept crowds at bay, but everyone wanted to be close to where humanity's future was being decided. Emperor Zain spent his time learning about human civilization through Arya's databases and direct observation. He watched human news broadcasts, studied Earth's history, and spoke with scholars and leaders who were brought to meet him. The more he learned, the more convinced he became that humanity was exactly what his empire needed. "Your species is remarkable," he told Hyun during one of their conversations. "You have maintained your creativity and optimism, despite facing countless challenges. Most civilizations become cautious and conservative as they develop, but humans seem to become more innovative under pressure." "Maybe because we're still young," Hyun suggested. "We haven't learned to be afraid of failure yet. Perhaps. Or perhaps it is something fundamental about human nature. Your willingness to try the impossible may be your greatest strength." As days passed, the pressure on Hyun grew enormous. World leaders called him constantly, each wanting to influence Earth's response to the galactic offer. Some urged him to accept the Emperor's original proposal. Joining as a junior partner would bring incredible technological advances. Others insisted that humanity should remain independent, developing naturally without alien interference. But Hyun kept thinking about the third option he had suggested. The more he considered it, the more convinced he became that it was the right path. On the 7th day after first contact, Hyun made his decision. He asked Ambassador Thorne to arrange a formal meeting with representatives from all Earth's major nations. It was time to present humanity's response to the galaxy. The meeting took place in a large tent set up near the Wanderer. Leaders from dozens of countries attended, along with scientists, military officials, and diplomats. Emperor Zain sat at the head of the table, looking more like a wise grandfather than a galactic ruler. "Your Majesty," Hyun began, feeling nervous but determined, "Earth has considered your generous offer, but we would like to propose something different." "Please proceed," the Emperor said, his ancient eyes showing interest. "You offered us a choice between joining your empire as junior partners or remaining isolated. But as I said before, there's always a third option. We propose the creation of the Human Problem-Solving Initiative." Hyun stood and walked to a simple whiteboard that he had requested. In basic drawings, he illustrated his idea. "Instead of joining your empire, we want to work with it. Humans would become specialists in solving problems that advanced civilizations consider impossible. We would travel throughout the galaxy, working on challenges that have stumped your best minds for centuries." The human delegates looked skeptical. General Kim Tae-ho spoke up. "What would Earth gain from this arrangement?" "Knowledge," Hyun replied. "Every problem we solve would teach us more about advanced technology and galactic civilization. We would learn at a pace we can handle, without being overwhelmed by receiving too much too quickly." "And what would the galaxy gain?" asked Dr. Sarah Chen, Earth's representative to the United Nations. "A new way of thinking," Emperor Zain answered before Hyun could respond. "Mr. Park is proposing that humans become teachers as well as students. Your species would show my civilizations how to approach problems with fresh perspectives." Hyun nodded. "We wouldn't just solve problems for the galaxy. We would teach other species how to think like humans. how to see simple solutions to complex challenges, how to not be afraid of trying something that might fail. The tent fell quiet as everyone considered this proposal. It was unlike anything that had been discussed in the previous negotiations. President Martinez of the European Federation raised a concern. What guarantees would we have? How do we know this arrangement would remain equal and fair? You don't, Emperor Zane said simply. But then you have no guarantees about anything in life. What you have is an opportunity to make the galaxy a more innovative place, while learning more than your species could discover in 1,000 years of isolated development. I support Hyun's proposal, So Young announced. It preserves human independence while giving us the chance to contribute something meaningful to galactic civilization. One by one, the Earth delegates voiced their support. Some were enthusiastic, others were cautious, but all agreed that the human problem-solving initiative was better than either of the original alternatives. Very well, Emperor Zane said. I accept Earth's proposal. The human problem-solving initiative will begin with a small team of specialists. Mr. Park, I assume you will lead this team. Me? Hyun was surprised again. I thought you would want scientists or engineers. I want people who think like you, the Emperor replied. People who believe that any problem can be solved with enough patience and creativity. Scientists and engineers can learn the technical details. What I need are people with the right attitude. The formal agreements took weeks to negotiate, but the basic framework was established that day. Earth would select a team of problem solvers to work throughout the galaxy. In exchange, humanity would receive gradual access to galactic knowledge and technology. The Wanderer would serve as the team's headquarters and transport. Arya was delighted to have a permanent crew of humans to work with. I have been lonely for so long, she told Hyun. Now I will have friends to share the journey among the stars. 3 months later, Hyun found himself standing on the bridge of the Eternal Wanderer as it prepared for its first interstellar mission. His team consisted of 12 humans from various backgrounds: mechanics, doctors, teachers, farmers, and artists. What they had in common was a willingness to try solving problems that others considered impossible. Are you ready? Emperor Zane asked. He had decided to accompany the first mission personally, curious to see how humans would handle their first galactic challenge. I think so, Hyun replied, looking out at the stars through the ship's viewing screen. What's our first assignment? A medical emergency on Kepler 442b, Arya announced. The inhabitants are suffering from a plague that has baffled their doctors for 50 years. It should be a good test of human problem-solving abilities. As the Wanderer jumped to faster-than-light travel, Hyun felt a mixture of excitement and nervousness. He was no longer just a mechanic who fixed broken machines in a small Korean town. He was humanity's representative to the galaxy, carrying the hopes and dreams of his entire species. What do you think we'll find out there? So Young asked. She had joined the team as their cultural liaison. Broken things that need fixing, Hyun replied with a smile, and people who have forgotten that every problem has a solution if you approach it with the right attitude. Emperor Zine, listening from his seat nearby, allowed himself a moment of satisfaction. For the first time in centuries, he was genuinely optimistic about the future of galactic civilization. The humans would shake things up, challenge old assumptions, and remind everyone that the impossible was just another word for something that hadn't been solved yet. The galaxy was about to become a much more interesting place. The stasis chamber opened with a sound like wind through crystal caves. Hyun watched in amazement as the most powerful being in the galaxy slowly sat up, looking around with eyes that had seen the birth and death of civilizations. Emperor Zane Vortex was not what Hyun had expected. Instead of a mighty warrior or a frightening tyrant, he saw someone who looked tired, very, very tired. The Emperor appeared almost human, though his skin had a faint silver tint and his eyes held depths that spoke of unimaginable age. Arya, the Emperor said, his voice gentle and warm. How long this time?
317 years, my lord, Arya replied.
But we found them. We found the species you were seeking. Emperor Zane looked at Hyun with curiosity rather than the imperial authority that everyone expected. You are the one who woke my ship? I just connected some power cables, Hyun said, feeling awkward. Arya did most of the work herself. The Emperor smiled and suddenly looked much younger. Modest, I like that. Please tell me how you approached the problem of repairing the Wanderer. As Hyun explained his simple methods, The Emperor listened with complete attention. Ambassador Thorn and the other Veltar watched nervously, unsure how their ancient ruler would react to these primitive repair techniques. Fascinating, the Emperor said when Hyun finished. You treated Arya as a living being rather than a machine. You talked to her, shared stories, made her feel less alone. No one in my empire thought to try that approach. She was lonely, Hyun said. That was the real problem, not any technical failure. Emperor Zane stood and walked to one of the ship's viewing screens. Outside, they could see the forest of Jirisan and the lights of human cities in the distance. Do you know why I came to your world? The Emperor asked. Arya said it was a test, but I don't understand what kind of test. A test of perspective, the Emperor replied. For 10,000 years I have ruled a galactic civilization that spans millions of worlds. We have technology that can reshape planets, medicine that can cure any disease, ships that travel between galaxies in moments. He gestured to the advanced systems around them. But we have lost something important. We have become so sophisticated that we can no longer see simple solutions. Every problem requires complex analysis, teams of experts, years of study. We have forgotten how to just try something and see if it works. Hyun began to understand. You wanted to find someone who hadn't learned that some problems are impossible. Exactly. When I heard reports of a young species in this sector, one that still used primitive technology but showed remarkable innovation, I decided to investigate personally. I deliberately crashed the Wanderer in your most remote wilderness and went into stasis. I wanted to see if humans would find the ship and what they would do with it. Dr. Lee, who had been listening quietly, spoke up. You expected us to find a crashed alien ship and try to repair it? I hoped you would, the Emperor said. But I was not certain. Many species would have studied it from a distance, afraid to touch something they did not understand. Others would have tried to take it apart for the metal. Only a species with the right combination of curiosity and confidence would attempt repairs. Ambassador Thorn's crystal features showed confusion. My lord, why did you not simply contact them directly? Why this elaborate test? Emperor Zane turned from the screen to face the assembled group. Because I needed to know if humans could solve problems that we could not. For 3 centuries, the galaxy's best engineers could not wake Arya. But a human mechanic succeeded in 5 days, using tools and methods that we considered primitive. I'm not special, Hyun protested. Any good mechanic could have done the same thing. That, said the Emperor, is exactly why humans are special. You think that fixing impossible things is normal? You believe that every problem has a solution if you approach it with enough patience and creativity. The Emperor walked over to Hyun and placed a hand on his shoulder. My empire has a problem, Mr. Park. We have become too advanced for our own good. We have so many rules and procedures that we can no longer innovate. We study problems until they become impossibly complex, then give up because the solutions seem too difficult. What kind of problem? So Young asked. She had been listening from the chamber's entrance, trying to understand the implications of this conversation for Earth. Stagnation, the Emperor replied. Entire civilizations that have stopped growing, stopped learning, stopped trying new things. Diseases that we cannot cure because they require thinking outside our established medical principles. Technologies that we cannot develop because they contradict our existing theories. He gestured to the ship around them. The Wanderer itself is an example. This ship was built by a species that understood principles we have forgotten. When they died out, we could maintain the ship but not truly understand it. Until now. Hyun looked around at the impossible technology surrounding him. You want humans to help solve problems in your empire? I want humans to teach my empire how to think like humans, the Emperor corrected. Your species has something that we lost long ago. You believe that any problem can be solved if you approach it with the right attitude. You're not afraid to try simple solutions to complex problems. But we're primitive compared to you, Dr. Lee objected. Our technology is thousands of years behind yours. Your technology is primitive, the Emperor agreed. But your thinking is not. You have maintained something that advanced civilizations always lose. The willingness to experiment, to fail, to try again with a different approach. Emperor Zion walked back to the viewing screen and looked out at the lights of human civilization. I have a proposal for your species. But it cannot come from me. It must come from humanity itself. And I want Mr. Park here to be the one who speaks for Earth. Me? Hyun was shocked. I'm just a mechanic. I don't know anything about politics or diplomacy. You know how to fix things that other people say cannot be fixed, the Emperor replied. That is exactly the qualification I am looking for. He turned to address the entire group. Earth stands at a crossroads. You can join the galactic community as a junior partner, receiving our protection and some of our technology in exchange for your unique problem-solving abilities. Or you can remain isolated until you develop naturally, which may take thousands of years. What's the third option? Hyun asked, surprising everyone. The Emperor raised an eyebrow. Third option? There's always a third option, Hyun said. That's what I've learned from fixing machines. When you have two choices and neither one feels right, look for a third way. Emperor Zion smiled again, and this time it reached his ancient eyes. Tell me, Mr. Park, what third option do you see? Hyun thought for a moment, looking around at the incredible technology of the ship and the worried faces of his fellow humans. What if we don't join as junior partners or stay isolated? What if we work together as equals? Equals? Ambassador Thorne sounded shocked. Humans are barely capable of interplanetary travel. But we're capable of thinking in ways you've forgotten, Hyun replied. That has to be worth something. Emperor Zane nodded slowly. Go on. What if humans became problem-solving specialists for the galaxy? We could work on the impossible challenges that your advanced civilizations can't solve. But instead of being your subjects, we'd be your teachers. We'd show your people how to think differently, how to see simple solutions to complex problems. The Emperor was quiet for a long moment, considering this proposal. Finally, he spoke. In 10,000 years of rule, no species has ever offered to teach my empire anything. The audacity is remarkable. Is that good or bad? Hyun asked. It is perfectly human, the Emperor replied, and exactly what the galaxy needs. The next morning, Hyun found himself standing inside an alien spacecraft, wondering how his life had become so strange. The Korean government had agreed to let him work on the ship, but only with Veltar supervision. Scientists and military officials watched everything from a safe distance. Inside the Eternal Wanderer, nothing made sense according to Earth technology. The walls seemed alive, pulsing gently with soft light. Cables and wires grew like vines through organic-looking channels. Computer screens floated in the air without any visible support. This is impossible, muttered Dr. Lee Jin-ho, the government's chief engineer. He had insisted on accompanying Hyun into the ship. Nothing here follows any engineering principles I know. Ambassador Thorne moved gracefully through the corridors, his crystal body reflecting the ship's strange lights. The Wanderer represents technology from the dawn of galactic civilization. It blends organic and mechanical systems in ways that most species never master. Hyun ran his hands along one of the living walls. It felt warm and smooth, almost like skin. How do you repair something like this? That, said the ambassador, is what we have been trying to discover for 3 centuries. They reached the ship's central chamber, a vast space filled with floating screens and impossible geometries. In the center stood a pillar of light that seemed to contain swirling galaxies. That is Aria's core consciousness, Ambassador Thorne explained. She's not just a computer program. She is a living mind born from the ship itself. As if summoned by her name, Aria's voice filled the chamber. Hello, Hyun. I'm glad you decided to help me. What exactly is wrong with you? Hyun asked, speaking to the light pillar as if it were a person. I am not broken in the way you might expect, Aria replied. My systems function perfectly, but for 300 years I have been alone and afraid. When we crashed on your world, I went into protective sleep to preserve my Emperor's life. I have been dreaming ever since. Dr. Lee checked his instruments frantically. Her power systems are operating at 97% efficiency. Navigation, life support, everything is working fine. I don't understand what needs to be repaired. Hyun studied the readings on his simple diagnostic tools. They showed the same thing. The ship was not broken in any technical sense, but he had learned to listen for things that instruments could not. Detect, you're lonely, he said to Arya. You've been sleeping alone for so long that you forgot how to stay awake. The lights in the chamber grew brighter. Yes, that is exactly right. My creators designed me to bond with living beings. I need interaction, communication, shared experiences. Without that, I cannot maintain full consciousness. Ambassador Thorne's crystalline features shifted in what might have been amazement. In 300 years of investigation, no one considered that the ship might be experiencing psychological rather than technical problems. Over the following days, Hyun worked with Arya in ways that baffled the watching scientists. Instead of running diagnostics, He told her stories about Earth. He described human music, shared jokes, explained how machines worked in his repair shop. You fix things that other people give up on, Arya observed during one of their conversations. Why do you do that? Hyun thought about this while connecting power to another dormant system. Because everything deserves a chance to work again. People throw away machines too quickly. They don't take time to understand what's really wrong. The galaxy is like that too, Arya said sadly. When something becomes too complex to understand, most species abandon it and build something simpler. They forget that complex problems sometimes have simple solutions. As Hyun spent more time with Arya, the ship began to change. Systems that had been dormant for centuries came online. The bioneural network started growing new connections. Even the ship's physical structure seemed to heal itself. This is unprecedented, Dr. Lee reported to his superiors in Seoul. The ship is literally repairing itself as Mr. Park works with it. But he's not using any advanced techniques. He just talks to it like it's alive. It is alive, Hyun corrected him. Arya isn't just a program running on a computer. She's a living being who happens to exist as pure consciousness. She doesn't need better hardware. She needs friendship. The breakthrough came on the 5th day. Hyun was working in the ship's memory core, trying to understand how the bioneural networks processed information. The technology was far beyond anything humans had developed. But the basic principles reminded him of something familiar. You're like the old analog computers I used to repair, he told Arya. They needed everything to be perfectly balanced. If one component was out of sync, the whole system would fail. I have never thought of myself that way, Arya replied. But yes, I suppose that is accurate. Hyun studied the network patterns flowing through the crystalline memory cores. You've been running on backup systems for so long that your main consciousness got disconnected. You need to remember how to integrate all your systems together. But how? I have tried for decades to restore full integration. Stop trying so hard, Hyun said. Sometimes when I'm working on a difficult repair, the solution comes when I stop thinking about it so much. Let your systems find their own balance. He began disconnecting some of the backup systems that had been keeping Arya stable but limited. Dr. Lee protested loudly, but Ambassador Thorne stopped him. Let the human work, the Veltar said. He has succeeded where we have failed. As the backup systems went offline, Arya's consciousness expanded throughout the ship. Her voice became clearer, more vibrant. The lights grew brighter and more coordinated. For the first time in 3 centuries, the Eternal Wanderer was truly awake. I can feel everything, Arya said with wonder in her voice. Every system, every component. I remember what it was like to be whole. The ship's transformation was visible from outside. The buried hull began to glow softly. Vines and moss fell away as the metal surface renewed itself. The craft slowly rose from the ground where it had rested for so long. Magnificent, Ambassador Thorne whispered. The Wanderer flies again. But Arya's next words shocked everyone in the chamber. My Emperor is awakening, she announced. He has been waiting in stasis for someone like Hyun to find us. The test is complete. Test? Hyun asked. What test? The crash was not an accident, Arya explained. Emperor Zane came to this world deliberately. He was searching for a species that could think differently, solve problems in new ways. He needed to find beings who had not learned that some problems are impossible. Deep in the ship's medical bay, stasis systems that had been dormant for 3 centuries began to activate. Emperor Zane Vortex, ruler of the galaxy, was waking up after a 300-year sleep, and he was very interested in meeting the human who had passed his test. He's been waiting for us? Hyun asked, trying to understand what this meant. He has been waiting for someone like you, Arya corrected, someone who would see a broken ship and decide to fix it, no matter how impossible it seemed. Someone who would talk to a lonely consciousness and help her remember how to be whole. The lights throughout the ship pulsed in a rhythm like a heartbeat. Emperor Zane was almost ready to meet the species he had traveled so far to find. 3 days after Hyun opened the panel on the strange craft, the sky above Jirisan Mountain changed forever. Kim So-young was eating breakfast in her Seoul apartment when every emergency alert system in South Korea activated at once. She worked for the Ministry of Science as a specialist in unusual phenomena. Her job was to investigate things that did not fit normal explanations. But she had never seen anything like this. The news report showed the same impossible sight from dozens of angles. Massive ships hung in the sky above the mountains. They were beautiful and terrifying at the same time. Each ship was larger than a city block, made of materials that seemed to bend light around them. They moved without any visible engines, silent as shadows. So Young's phone rang immediately. It was her supervisor, Director Park. "Get to Jerison now," he said. "The ships are directly above the location where that metal object was found. This cannot be a coincidence." So Young drove toward the mountains as fast as traffic allowed. Military jets flew overhead, but they looked like toys compared to the alien vessels. Radio reports said the ships had appeared suddenly, materializing as if they had been invisible before. The ships made no aggressive moves. They simply waited in the sky as if they were looking for something. When So Young arrived at the mountain, she found chaos. Military vehicles surrounded the hiking trail. Scientists set up equipment everywhere. News crews tried to get closer despite police barriers. She found Hyun sitting on a fallen log near his van. He looked tired and confused. Dae sat next to him, staring up at the ships with wide eyes. "You're the mechanic who opened the craft?" So Young asked Hyun. "I just connected some power cables," Hyun said. "I didn't know this would happen." Before So Young could ask more questions, something changed in the sky. One of the ships moved lower, descending slowly toward a clear area near the forest. As it landed, the trees around it bent away as if pushed by invisible hands. A section of the ship opened like a flower blooming. Light spilled out and figures emerged. They were tall, much taller than humans. Their bodies seemed to be made of living crystal, changing color as they moved. They walked with grace and purpose toward the group of humans. The lead figure raised one crystalline hand in what might have been a greeting. When it spoke, the words came out in perfect Korean, though its mouth did not move in a human way. "I am Ambassador Kale Thorne of the Veltar people. We come seeking our lost emperor. We believe you have found his ship." Military officers surrounded the aliens, weapons ready, but So Young stepped forward. This was why the government had sent her. She was trained to handle first contact situations, though she had never expected to actually use that training. "I am Kim So Young, representing the Korean government," she said. "What emperor are you talking about?" The alien's crystal features shifted in what might have been sadness. "Emperor Zane Vortex, ruler of the Galactic Council. His ship, the Eternal Wanderer, disappeared in this sector 300 years ago. We have been searching ever since." So Young felt her world shift. Galactic Council. 300 years. This was bigger than anyone had imagined. "The object in the forest," she said. "That's your Emperor's ship?" "Yes, but we do not understand how you were able to activate it. For 3 centuries, the galaxy's greatest engineers have tried to access the Wanderer's systems. The ship's bio-neural network went completely dormant after the crash. No one could wake it up." Ambassador Thorne turned his attention to Hyun. "Yet we detected a signal from the ship 3 days ago. Someone managed to restore power to its basic systems. How is this possible?" Hyun stood up slowly. He felt very small next to the tall crystal being. "I'm just a mechanic. I fix machines that other people say can't be fixed. The ship seemed dead, but I found a weak power signature. I connected some cables and gave it a little energy. That's all." The ambassador's crystalline body pulsed with different colors. Other Veltar moved closer, their forms shifting through shades of blue and silver. "Impossible," said another Veltar. "The Wanderer's systems require quantum-level integration. The bio-neural networks are more complex than entire star systems. No primitive species should be able to interface with them. Yet here we are," Ambassador Thorne said. The signal was clear. The ship is awake. So Young watched the exchange with growing understanding. These aliens were clearly more advanced than humans. Their technology was beyond anything Earth had developed. But somehow, a simple human mechanic had succeeded where their advanced engineers had failed. "What exactly did you do?" she asked Hyun. Hyun described his work in simple terms, how he had found the electrical signature, connected his power cables, and gradually increased the voltage until something responded. It sounded almost mundane compared to the massive ships overhead. "You spoke to the ship as you worked," Ambassador Thorne observed. "We detected audio patterns mixed with the technical signals." "I always talk to machines," Hyun said. "It helps me understand what's wrong with them. Sometimes they just need to know that someone cares about fixing them." The Veltar exchanged looks that somehow conveyed surprise despite their alien features. 300 years, the ambassador said. No one thought to simply talk to the ship. So Young began to see what had happened. The aliens were so advanced that they had forgotten how to think simply. They had tried complex solutions to what might have been a simple problem. "Can we see the ship?" Ambassador Thorne asked. "We must confirm that our Emperor is safe." The group walked through the forest to where the craft lay buried. In daylight, it looked even more impressive. The open panel glowed softly and strange sounds came from inside. The Veltar stopped at the edge of the craft and made gestures that might have been reverence or prayer. Ambassador Thorne approached the opening carefully. "Eternal Wanderer," he said in a voice filled with emotion, "we have found you at last." From inside the ship came a response. A new voice, gentle and musical, speaking in the same way that somehow bypassed language and went directly to understanding. "Welcome, children of the crystal worlds. I am Arya, consciousness of this vessel. I have been sleeping for so long. But the human called Hyun woke me with kindness and simple care. He reminded me what it feels like to be loved instead of just analyzed." Ambassador Thorne turned to Hyun with something like wonder in his alien features. "You did more than restore power," he said. "You gave the ship hope. That is something we had not considered." So Young realized that first contact was turning out very differently than anyone had expected. The aliens had not come to conquer or study humans. They had come looking for their lost leader, and they had found something else entirely. They had found a species that could solve problems in ways they had forgotten were possible. "There is more you must know," Arya's voice said from the ship. "My Emperor is not lost. He is here waiting, and he has been expecting humans to find him." Park Hyun wiped grease from his hands as his phone rang. The clock on his workshop wall showed 11:30 at night. Most people would ignore a call this late, but Hyun knew his reputation. When machines broke in impossible ways, people called him. "Hyun, this is Lee Day from the Forest Service," said the voice on the phone. "I need your help with something strange." Hyun knew Day from school. They had been friends for 20 years. Dee never called unless something was really wrong. "What kind of strange?" Hyun asked. "Hikers found something in the mountains. It looks like metal, but it's huge. The government people came to look at it today. They said it might be dangerous waste. But I think you should see it first." Hyun looked at his tools scattered across the workbench. He had been fixing an old truck engine, but that could wait. Strange metal in the forest sounded more interesting than another broken transmission. "Where do you want me to meet you?" "Jirisan Mountain Trail. The one that goes to the old temple." "I'll be waiting at the parking area." He unloaded his mobile repair kit into his van. The kit had everything he needed to diagnose most machines: computers, cables, power tools, and testing equipment. He had built the kit himself over 10 years of fixing things that other people said could not be fixed. The drive to Jirisan took 2 hours through winding mountain roads. Day was waiting in his Forest Service truck, drinking coffee from a thermos. He looked worried. "Thanks for coming," Day said. "The thing is about 3 kilometers up the trail. We'll need to hike." They walked through the dark forest with flashlights. The trail was rough and steep. After an hour of climbing, Day stopped and pointed his light into the trees. "There," he said. "You can see it through those branches." Hyun looked where Day was pointing. At first, he saw nothing unusual. Then his eyes adjusted and he saw it. Something large and metallic was buried in the ground between the trees. Moss and vines covered most of it, but sections of smooth metal showed through the green growth. They pushed through the undergrowth to get closer. The object was bigger than Hyun had expected. Much bigger. It stretched for at least 50 meters through the forest. The shape was wrong for any aircraft he knew. Too smooth, too curved, like it had been grown instead of built. "How long has this been here?" Hyun asked. "Nobody knows. The hikers just noticed it because heavy rain last week washed away some of the dirt. But look at these trees." Day shined his light on the thick oak trees growing around the metal object. "These are at least 100 years old. Maybe more." Hyun walked around the buried shape, studying it with his flashlight. The metal was like nothing he had ever seen. It looked almost like silver, but it did not reflect light the same way. There were no visible joints or welds. The entire surface seemed to be made from one piece. "The government people said it was probably an old airplane that crashed decades ago," Day said. "But does this look like any airplane to you?" Hyun had to agree. This looked nothing like any aircraft from Earth. The curves were too organic, too fluid. And the size was enormous. If this was a plane, it would be bigger than the largest passenger jets. He found what looked like a seam in the metal and traced it with his fingers. The line was so thin he could barely feel it. but his experienced hands told him this was some kind of access panel. "I want to try something," Hyun said. He went back to get his equipment from the trail where they had left it. He returned with a portable scanner and a small power generator. The scanner could detect electrical activity in most machines. He connected the cables and turned on the power. The scanner showed nothing at first. The metal object seemed completely dead. But Hyun was patient. He had learned that sometimes machines needed time to respond. He moved the scanner slowly along the surface, looking for any sign of electrical activity. After 30 minutes, he found something. Deep inside the buried object, there was a very weak electrical signal, so weak that most people would miss it. But Hyun had spent years learning to find the smallest signs of life in broken machines. "There's something still working in there," he told Day. "Some kind of power source. Should we call the government people back?" Hyun thought about this. The government people would probably just put barriers around the object and wait for experts from the city. Those experts would study it for months without touching anything. But Hyun had always believed that the best way to understand a machine was to work on it. "Give me 1 more hour," he said. "Let me see if I can find a way to access the systems." He connected a different cable to his scanner. This one could provide a small amount of electrical power. Sometimes dead machines just needed a little energy to wake up their basic systems. He found the seam again and attached the power cable near it. Very slowly, he increased the power. 5 volts, 10 volts, 20 volts. At 25 volts, something clicked inside the metal object. The seam began to glow with a soft blue light. Hyun and Day stepped back in surprise. The glow grew brighter. Then, with a sound like air being released, the panel slid open. Inside, Hyun could see a corridor filled with strange lights and surfaces that seemed to move like living things. "Hyun," Day said quietly, "I don't think this is from Earth." Before Hyun could answer, a new sound came from inside the object. It was rhythmic and electronic, like a heartbeat made of beeps and pulses. The sound grew louder and faster. Then from somewhere deep inside the buried craft came a transmission. It was not in any human language, but somehow both men understood its meaning. It was a distress call, broadcast on frequencies that should not exist, reaching out to the stars with a simple message. The signal said, "Found, awake, come home." High above Earth, in the cold darkness of space, something heard that call and began to move toward the small blue planet. The message had been waiting 300 years to be sent. Now finally, it was on its way to those who had been searching for so long. Hyun stared at the open panel and the strange lights inside. He did not know that his simple attempt to fix a broken machine had just changed everything for humanity. He did not know that ships were already turning toward Earth from the distant stars. All he knew was that he had found something amazing in the forest, and it was not as broken as everyone thought.